I believe that the most powerful way to make a change is to share ideas. So that's why I jumped at a chance to share some ideas with you on this stage. That, and I have to be honest, it's always been a childhood ambition of mine to wear a Britney Spears microphone on the stage in front of an audience. So that is childhood me, absolutely so happy right now. So if you subscribe to the butterfly effect theory, which I do, each and every one of us has the ability to make a difference. Whether that's a smile to a stranger on the street, a like on a friend's post, or a new idea at work. You might not know that impact that you've had, but it will be there. Something that's always stuck with me is something I read by Alan Turing. And in 1950, in one of his papers, he wrote that if you displace an electron by even a billionth of a centimetre, it can make the difference between a man dying in an avalanche a year later and surviving it. And that's a really powerful thought, that really tiny electron could have such a big impact even a year later. Which brings me on to a story I was told at school. We were told about the lettuce, the rabbit, and the fox. And I really wanted to make a joke out of this, but I can't find anything funny about it. So it was actually a biology lesson in which the teacher was telling us about the natural cycles and about the fact that nature is always trying to find balance and is always trying to find equilibrium within itself. So if there's too many rabbits or not enough foxes, nature will find a way to bring those entities back in control. And I think when we look at the challenges out there with sustainability, that looking to nature is a way we can learn so many lessons. Whether that's looking at its own cycles in the natural carbon cycle or the natural nitrogen cycle, or whether that is looking at the fact that it has delicate bioeconomies that it has managed for thousands of years. So one of the ways that humans, no offence humans, have had a big impact on this planet is based around our consumption, and in particular materials. Now, I'm not here to tell you that plastic is evil. Plastic is actually a fantastic material, but we've all heard the challenges of plastic right now. And the fact that we have chosen to use plastic for applications that perhaps it isn't the right material for. And so we have this abundance of plastic that's going nowhere or into landfill or into the sea. So I think we need to start thinking a little bit differently about the materials we're using. And as a student of history, not just materials, but as history, I like to look back in time and learn from our ancestors. And if we go back to the Chinese dynasties, looking back to the Great Wall of China, the Great Wall of China was made using sticky rice starch to cement its walls. And that is still standing today. Fast forward a little bit to the Roman Empire, which is one of my favourites. The Romans really understood the materials around them and the natural resources they had. And they were really great at finding ways to use them in keeping with those properties. So if you take some of the Roman structures that still stand, the Colosseum used a mixture of hot volcanic rock and limestone to make sure that it's still standing today. And let's be honest, the pyramids aren't made of plastic. The other one is if we look a bit closer to home and at our English heritage sites. You look at the way that they're produced and you look at some of those 16th century cottages that we see around the country. They're using straw as thatch, and that is creating insulation in those buildings. So there's a few examples of historically, before plastic, we were using natural materials and creating great structures. Fast forward to the 1900s, I'm taking a little journey here, and particularly to the 1950s, when research and development into natural materials slowed down, and we got to the mentality of man or person knows best. And we created man-made resources man-made materials with finite resources, and we created plastic. And what happened was that for those 50 years, we stopped researching and developing with materials that were the right materials for the applications that plastic was being used for. And that was because plastic is cheap and easy, and it's not a bad material, it's got great uses. But it was being used for applications that just weren't right for it. So I wanted to give a few examples of modern day where we are using natural materials and we are seeing some awesome benefits. One sector, which is very close to Stoke, is the ceramic sector. Now, the ceramic sector has never accepted that plastic was better. The ceramic sector kept on developing with ceramics and clay. And since then, they have produced so many high-tech products that some of you wouldn't even have heard of. We have ceramic brakes in cars. We have rockets being put on Mars, and that wasn't supposed to be a poem. We also have our components in our phone. You wouldn't have your mobile phones today without ceramic components. And most game-changingly, ceramics were put into hair straighteners. The other material I wanted to use an example of was wool. Now, I've been working with wool for almost a decade now, so it's gone so quickly. And wool is a really awesome natural material. You could say I'm biased, but I've seen the proof of it. It's a great insulator. It absorbs toxins. It absorbs moisture. It's natural. It's abundant. It's flexible. It's durable. It's long-lasting. It's all of those things that you can't create, or man can't create. It's been made by nature. And the application we've used it for is to replace polystyrene boxes in insulated packaging. And we've proven that you can produce a product with a natural material that not only matches the performance of a man-made fibre, but is actually better than it. So in the last year, we've saved around 2,000 tonnes of polystyrene from going to landfill. To put that into context, depending on the size of the elephant, it's around 525 elephants. And I think that just proves that nature has answers to some of those conundrums that we are facing up to. The other great thing about natural materials is they tend to have more than one property. Both clay and wool have examples where they have more than one property. But as I am biased by wool, wool actually, one of the properties that wool has that really enhances it in, say, format of insulated packaging is the fact it can absorb around 40% of its own weight in moisture before it feels wet. Now, you never see a wet sheep. You never see a cold sheep, but you also never see a wet sheep. It's that property that means that when it's used in conjunction with ice packs in packaging, the wool will absorb the moisture from the ice packs from that condensation, and it means the product, and it's a technical term, doesn't get soggy. So at the end, when it's delivered, it's safe. So there's some examples of where natural materials can be used and have been used and continue to be used for high-tech or replacements to some of those other man-made alternatives. In the last 3,000 years, or longer than that, of us using natural resources or natural materials in line with nature, we have had a fraction of the impact that we've had in the last 50 years on using finite resources and man-made, knows better materials. If you look around you of things that have lasted a long time, that are good quality, that can be passed down to the family, that would be structures, as I've already mentioned, or you have clothing, you have products, you have furniture, and you're not going to be passing your IKEA furniture down as a family heirloom. But here's a warning. Any natural material, no matter how sustainable it is, if it's overused, there will be a problem. So whatever we do going forward, we need to make sure that we're using the right material for the right application, fully researched from beginning to end of life. And that means we are choosing a material that has a sustainable source, that in the middle of its life, it's the right material for that, and it's not just being used because it's cheap or it's easy. And at the end of its life, we are designing in the fact that it can be reused, it can be recycled, or in the case of some of the examples I've given, it can be composted. One of the warnings that I kind of flagged up recently is around the use of trees. Now, you might all remember, or some of you will remember, that back 15 years ago, you'd receive an email and it said on the bottom, please don't print this off, save trees. Now, paper still comes from trees. And while paper is an answer to quite a lot of our plastic questions, paper isn't the only answer, and it shouldn't be the go-to just because it's easy. because paper does come from trees. And although we have sustainable sourcing of trees for paper and for cardboard, the time that demand outstrips supply is a time that humans go big, and we have effects like we're seeing in the Amazon rainforest with deforestation. So it's all about balance, and it's about making sure that whatever we're replacing something with, we're thinking about that balance and that full life cycle. Something else that I am personally really passionate about and falls in line with nature and balance is around the responsibility of businesses within the wider world. And the fact that we need to turn the mentality of just working for our shareholders on the head to actually being that we need to be working for our stakeholders. Because stakeholders include people and the wider world. And without the wider world and people, you wouldn't have businesses. People talk about the fact that we are killing the planet. The truth is, we're not killing the planet. Nature is making the planet uninhabitable for us. And it will continue to try to restore that balance, and it will restore that balance with or without us. So fear and doom doesn't bring people together, which is why I wanted to provide you with examples today of where there are businesses, there are people, there are designers making changes by looking at new ideas. Sharing those ideas, having conversations, collaborating, innovating, thinking a bit differently. That's what brings people together. Every one of us in this room has the ability to make a small impact, and it to be an impactful impact. But imagine as a collective, if everyone in this room had that small impact together. So here's my slightly woolly electron. Where's yours? Thank you.